You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red as we head into the international break with Nottingham Forest on the back of 4 straight defeats in the relegation zone. So we'll talk about that and how they can get going, hopefully, in the coming weeks. It's also a year of Steve Cooper tomorrow, so we'll discuss that. First of all, in the company of Reds legend Gary Birtles. Morning, Gary, you well?
Good morning. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good. And second guest today is Michael Temple. Temps, you okay?
Morning, Matt. I'm good, thank you.
Good. It's also today the anniversary of Brian Clough's passing 18 years ago today. I mean, Gary, there's not much more you could say about Brian Clough, but we can't let the day go without some kind of recognition. It's always a tough day for you, given how close you were to him.
It's always going to be a tough day. You know, he was almost like part of your family. You know, I can remember vividly the day he passed away when Nigel let me know. And it was like, you know, a member of your own family because of, you know, what we achieved as a group together. Yeah, it's still there, you know, and it will always still be there because it was so special. It was just such a special time.
Obviously, he put Forest on the map, and the manager today has put them back on the map to an extent. Tomorrow is a year of Steve Cooper attempts. We've waited a long time for managers to come along who can deliver what he's delivered. Obviously, it's tough at the moment, but just reflect on a year of Cooper.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to compare him to Brian Clough, but yeah, incredible achievement. And I don't think that where we are at this moment in time should detract from the fact that he inherited a club who were in the relegation zone in the Championship and did what he did. I think it's fair to say if Steve Cooper had finished mid-table in the Championship last year, there'd be less pressure on his job than there is now. So just a fantastic galvanising effect that resulted in promotion. And look, we are where we are right now, and we'll get into that. But Steve Cooper can be immensely proud of what he's achieved in the last 12 months.
Yeah, before we do get into that, I mean, Gary, we used to do your column for the Post year after year, and we talk about, maybe this is the year, maybe this is the player, and for Cooper to actually do it, I mean, he's written whatever happens, he's written his name into the history of the clubs, hasn't he?
Oh, unbelievably so. I mean, you rightly so. Where you said where we were when he came to the football club, bottom of the table, 1 point, and we all thought maybe we're going the other way instead of the way we've gone. And to turn it around how he did has just been absolutely immense, and should be so proud. And the fans should be so happy that he came and he did this for us. And yes, it's been an indifferent start to the season, but it can get better without a doubt. Where I think we've seen glimpses of how well we can play. I think the problem is the number of players and trying to find the right team to start in his own mind. It's difficult when you've got that many people to keep happy.
What did you make of the Fulham game overall, Gary? Just general thoughts before we break it down.
I thought, again, it was just deja vu with the Bournemouth game. We did okay in the first half. We went in front again. And Steve can do nothing about his players switching off. You've got to learn your lessons from the previous game. If you don't learn your lessons as a player, there's nothing the manager can do. All he can say is what he says at half time. And I'm sure he said, don't let it happen again. What happened against Bournemouth? And what happens? 3 goals in 6 minutes. That's just lack of concentration. That's switching off. And then you're on the back foot again. You get back in the game, but it's too late. And yeah, it must be so annoying for Steve and his staff when he sees a lot of the good stuff that goes on, and then all of a sudden it's turned round in an instant, and you're chasing a game again.
Let's go through the goals before we come to selection and tactics. Things that's a separate debate. Temps, the first goal. I mean, Awani, he hasn't scored any. I should ask Gary, so I'll ask you, Temps. He hasn't scored any blinders yet, but yeah, that's a good thing to me in a sense, isn't it? That he's getting in the right area.
I've heard that described as a scrappy goal, but I don't think it was, because it was about instinct. He knew that if the flick on was won between the sticks, and he was going to be in a good position to win the second ball. And it played out later on, didn't it, with Worrell's flick on when he had an identical chance at the back stick in the second half. So I think that demonstrates that predatory instinct. The way that he's scored so far in this team has been about alertness in the 6-yard box rather than those bustling runs. But I think he demonstrated that he is that little bit different to the other number 9s in our squad, and that with the right service and given a run in the team, he can become a goal scorer. So I'm not deriding that goal at all. And I think strikers watching it, and I'm sure Garry will have this view, that's a goal to be proud of because he anticipated better than the defender that was marking him. And the finish was, pretty good. That's coming at him at a fair lick. It's had the nudge on from Ryan Yates. He's had to adapt his body shape and get in the right position. And he wasn't missing, was he? So, yeah, a lot of credit for Taiwo for putting that one away.
Well, let's put it in perspective a little bit here. Tottenham game, had he been playing in that Tottenham game, I think we might just have won that game because those 3 balls across the face of the goals in the 6-yard box. Where's he scored his 2 goals from? The 6-yard box. Instinct. That's right. You're right, Temps. It's all about instinct. It's about being in the right place. And that Tottenham game, had we had somebody in the right place, we might well have won that game because we played very well. And I thought we were unlucky. But, that's what good strikers do. They know it's going to come their way. They expect it to come their way. And, he certainly does that.
I'll contradict my running order then because we sort of touched on team selection there. I mean, there was a big debate going into this game. Temps, me and you did a bit of a preview and said what we thought should happen. Cooper went his own way, and to an extent it works. Obviously, it didn't to a large extent as well. What did you make of the selection? With no Worrell, no O'Brien, other players given chances?
Yeah, that's where he got it wrong for me. And this isn't a hindsight thing because we did talk through this last week. I think Lewis O'Brien was man of the match, and he was on the pitch for 20 minutes. And we saw a level of industry, a busyness, a willingness to run, to tackle, to pass that was missing before he arrived on the scene. So Lewis O'Brien's selection for me is inked in for the next fixture because of that, because the showing he made with 20 minutes was beyond any other.
Can I just interrupt a little bit there? It's all right to do 20 minutes, but you have to do 90. And maybe that's why he wasn't in the starting 11 because the manager thought he couldn't do 90. There used to be a lad called David Johnson at Liverpool called Super Sub. Came on for 20 minutes and destroyed everybody, but he very rarely started a game.
I've seen no lack of fitness from Lewis and nothing to suggest
I'm not saying about fitness.
Have that impact. Yeah, well, look, I maybe, who knows? But I think that what he brings to that side, the level of industry, just being an all-round footballer, I think he could add something. And before the game, we called that his presence and also the steadying hand of Joe Worrell at the back could make a difference. And as it played out, they did, right? They had a positive impact when they came on the pitch. Lewis obviously got the goal, and there was a good touch in that build-up from Jesse Lingard to put Brennan through. So yeah, I think I'm going to be slightly critical of that team selection because it didn't bear out quite as he thought it would. Yates, he didn't have his best game defensively. We lacked a bit of composure at the back. The lack of pace was exposed again, and Joe wasn't in the side. But those runners in behind, especially for the wonder strike, was a good finish. But it was a result of them getting in behind, recycling the ball, and finding the space on the edge of the box. So there were some defensive frailties there, and I just think that Worrell solidified that, put his foot on the ball, found a pass, used it in a slightly wiser fashion than we had done in the first half. So I am critical of the team selection. I'm also critical of the way we set up in the first half. Whatever 11 go out there, we played the first 30, 35 minutes like a massive underdog in a cup game by sitting off, being compact, not pressing, choosing not to press, allowing them to have the ball. And they were able to move it quickly, change the point of attack and get at us quite easily. So the pressure was there to be seen in the first half. And I don't think we quite reacted quick enough. Now, look, that sounds incredibly negative. I think we've got the weapons in the squad to fix it through team selection and imposing ourselves more in the game, especially at home in the first half, because no one can say we came out the traps positively on Friday night.
Well, the thing is, again, the one person you've not mentioned who I thought caused problems for them when he came on was Sam Surridge. I thought he was a nuisance. I thought he was a pest. I thought he was making decent runs. He was stretching their defenders really well. His energy is never been in doubt. His work rate's never been in doubt. And I think that upsets defenders. Well, I know it does because I did that. I always close defenders down. That was my job. Put pressure on them, try and force a mistake. And I thought he did particularly well when he came on. So there's another option for you. We know he can finish if he gets the opportunity. Just because we're in the Premier League doesn't mean he's not going to finish as well as he did in the Championship. You know, if the chances come your way and he finishes like he did, you know, you've got an opportunity there. I think the one worrying thing is, you know, not from, you know, just from me or us, the whole Forest fans, is that we've lost to the two teams who came up with us. You know, and that you know is a bit of a concern. You know, we beat West Ham, who did particularly well last season. They're having a bit of a struggle still. And the thing is, the table doesn't look overly bad. Yes, we're in the bottom three, but you look at mid-table, it's 7-8 points. You know, so you win one game and you're back, you know, in a half decent position, but you have to get that win pretty quickly. And we talked about the run of games, the previous podcast we did, and the run of games look well with Bournemouth and Fulham. Well, we've lost two out of two with those. The Leeds game obviously was off. So we've got Leicester, but that's not going to be easy. They're bottom of the table, but, you know, they're Leicester. And it's a local derby, and you know, they'll see it as an opportunity to get themselves back in contention of getting out that bottom three. So, but it's an opportunity for us as well. We beat them last season in the FA Cup, deservedly so. So we've got nothing to fear or worry about there.
With the defence, particularly, Gary, two questions, I suppose. The first one is: it's quite a big call to leave out Worrell, or is it actually not a big call? Because just because he's captain, does that put him on a different pedestal?
No, it's always a big call to leave your captain out, no matter who you are. You know, Brian Clough would never have, you know, left John McGovern out the side. You know, he's pivotal in what we did, and you know, Brian Robson would never have been left out of the Manchester United team. You know, your captain's your captain. So I think it was a little bit of a surprise. I think what we all said before a ball was kicked. Lack of pace at the back is going to be a problem unless you are very, very, very good at concentrating for 90 minutes and, you know, being able to, you know, expect the runs of strikers, you know, expect what they're going to do. But lack of pace at the highest level is always going to find you out a little bit if you're not, you know, a world-class player. You know, I played against Gentili, you know, and he wasn't fast, but my word, what a player he was. He was nasty, but, you know, the most misnamed player of all time. But, you know, he's the reading of the game. It's like, you know, Alan Hansen, when played against people like him, you know, not the fastest in the world, but my word, did he read the game brilliantly. And that's a world-class attribute, I think, at the highest level. I always say it, the concentration levels have to be so good at the highest level. I do at any level, but the lower you go, your concentration levels are not as good. That's why you're playing in the Championship first, and you know we're League One, League Two, purely because you're not as good as the players at the highest level with regards of concentration and things like that. People forget about things like that. People look at ability and how many goals you score, but if you haven't got that, you know, nous and that concentration for the whole 90 minutes, you'll get found out. And I think we've got found out, you know, a little bit too easily at the moment at the back.
I suppose, Gary, a second thing to that is there's been quite a lot of chopping and changing at the back because no one's really put their hand up. Does that make it harder? You play at the back when you've got Cook in and out, Worrell in and out. Hopefully, Niakate's back soon. That will make a big difference. But in terms of
that was the difference, wasn't it? Yeah, we lost him, and that was a big, I think, a big problem. You know, the sooner he gets back, hopefully, the better for us. But you can't rely on one man. I mean, I played at the back, and I found it easy because I played as a striker. You know, I just knew the runs, you know, strikers were going to make, and I wasn't the fastest. I was when I got going, but you know, over 5-10 yards, not particularly. But I compensated for that by just dropping a little bit, and you know, just looking at the referee before I pulled the guy's shirt or stood on the back of his ankle. You know, you use things like that just to, you know, get the better of things. But yeah, I enjoyed playing at the back. It was, you know, it gave me quite a few more years than I actually might have had playing professional football.
But in terms of, you know, you rightly talk about seeing games out and concentration. Is it harder? Because when you play at the back, you want to know where the other centre half is and where the right back is. And if the guy behind you is different each time, does that make it more difficult to see a game out and not make the errors Forest are making?
It's about talking for me. I think you need leaders out on the pitch. You need the vocality out there. You know, people often say, well, you know, he's shouting this and he's shouting that, you know, blah, 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 just for show. But I disagree with that. I think if you're, you know, sort of, I always used to do it. I mean, I played with Paul Futcher at Grimsby at the end of our careers. And we both did that. We were both shouters. We were both, and we got 2 promotions on the trot, because you can switch off, and you don't want your teammates to switch off. You've got to keep them on the toes, and I think somebody with vocality can do that, and you respect them for it. And I was the same. If I wanted people to, if I wasn't doing the right things, I wanted to be told I wasn't doing the right things by my teammates. And I had people like Ian Bowyer who would tell you things like that, and it was good, because you learn then. You learn and you think about what you're going to do when you get out there. Not the instinctive bits, but the closing down, and the being aware of what's around you. And I think, the Championship level to Premier League level, I think the players have seen how big a difference there is between switching off in the Championship and switching off in the Premier League. It's just you get absolutely battered if you keep doing it. And in the last 2 games, yes, there's been a couple of fantastic strikes, but there've been avoidable goals for me as well. And that's a disappointment. The avoidable goals. Do the right thing, and maybe get rid. Don't try and be clever. It's a learning curve, but it's got to be a quick learning curve, because you can get cut adrift quickly. And at the moment, like I said, the league table doesn't look as bad as our position. And we go back to the Tottenham game. That game was, it was winnable for us, and we played well in that game. And we all said, if we play like we did against Tottenham, we'll stay up. If we play like we did against Bournemouth, we won't, sort of thing. That's what the Forest fans were saying. So it's a matter of getting the right team in Steve's head. The players he wants out there, and I think the international breaks come at a good time for us. So he can work on that, and I'm sure we'll see something different at the other end of that international break.
Is it a bit of a catch-22 for Cooper Temps, in the sense that we want continuity and consistency of selection, but we also want to see, fans saying, what about Emmanuel Dennis? Brandon in the comments is saying, what about Bien Con? There's all these players. It's a bit of a rock and a hard place, isn't it?
Yeah, he's in a difficult spot because Plan A hasn't quite worked out how he wanted it to, but the margins are paper thin between where we find ourselves now and being on more points. So conceding that goal at Everton, losing to the 2 promoted teams. Then let's not forget the VAR interventions against West Ham. You can make a case for the team being on anything from 1 to 9 points, and we find ourselves on 4. Steve Cooper's having these kind of shouts now from the periphery about changing the system, which I don't think he'll do, because he's recruited players and managed this entire year off the back of 3 at the back. And that's the way he likes to play. So whilst, yes, you could condense it in centre mid where experts feel there's been some gaping holes defensively, by going to a flat back 4, I don't think he'll do that. And I don't think, to your question, Matt, he'll be influenced too much by external voices. If there's a shout from a member of the coaching team or the analytics crew that suggests that a different system might work, he'll work on that and make the changes. But he's not going to react to fan pressure, and nor should he. He knows how to get the best out of this team. I think he's had a couple of experiments so far with selection which haven't gone quite the way that he thought he would. But I think he'll get himself out of this through selection rather than a change in the system. And I think that's probably the right thing to do, because there's still a lot of combinations to try. There's a lot of players that we all feel can live with this level. But I think we can all agree we haven't quite found the right combination yet. And putting Willy Bolly in that back 3 for Joe Worrell didn't improve it. And the midfield we had out on Friday night wasn't quite the one for me. So I think they're the 2 selections that he needs to change to make a marked improvement. But I don't think we'll see him go to a flat back 4 anytime soon.
I hope he doesn't listen to people on podcasts, but I think he should change formation. To me, they look like there's so many gaping holes in midfield, and maybe having Mangala and O'Brien fixes that, and they don't need to change formation when they're back, because they are athletic and can get across the pitch. But especially against Fulham, you see these huge holes in midfield. To me, you either have to play a flat back 4 and sacrifice those attacking fullbacks to an extent, not entirely. You see, Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, not to make comparisons, but they can get up and down the pitch. Or you take out one of these front 3 and put an extra body in midfield, or even make Gibbs-White play deeper in midfield. But to me, with results, I think being a little bit more conservative, having an extra body in midfield would be sensible now. It doesn't mean you can't go back to 3-4-3 and this system they're playing now, especially at home. But going to Leicester, I watched Leicester v Spurs. I know it was 6-2, but Leicester going forwards looked really good. And I think if we give Maddison time and space on the ball and Tielemans time and space on the ball, then they might really hurt Forest. That's looking forwards. I mean, Garry, you've played at the highest level, obviously, so you know more than me about this. Do you think, excuse me, do you think they need to change formation, or is Temps right? They should stick with what they've got?
I think in the Premier League, I think midfield is the vital area for me, because there are so many gifted individuals in most teams creation wise, and if you don't cut that avenue off, then you're going to let them keep creating and cause you problems. And I think sometimes, but saying that, I watched Norwich a lot. I commentated on them a lot when they were in the Premier League, when they kept coming up, going down, coming up, and they played Pookie up front by himself, but they still went down. With the system they played, they couldn't hack it, and that's what I'm saying about the midfield situation. I think sometimes you have to try and stifle oppositions, because it's all right. You talk about strikers, they're beholden on service from midfield. And, the Harry Kanes will tell you, this world will tell you that they are vital to what he does. But if you can stop them, I'm not talking about Man City, because if you stop one, you've got the other 4 or 5 players who are going to hurt you. But against, other teams that, you think are going to be in your neck of the woods in the table, then you can stifle. And then on the counter, we have got pace. We can hurt teams. So it might be, something to look at, just to change it for a game and see how it works. But only Steve will know that at the moment. We had Jed Spence last year, who was a revelation. You can't say anything else. He's not getting a game at Tottenham at the moment. He's terrific, but that was in the Championship. Would he have done it in the Premier League? We don't know, because we've not seen him yet. So you've got to forget things like that. But I think, to stop teams playing a little bit, you have to frustrate them. And the way to frustrate them is pack the midfield out sometimes. And then, like I say, we have pace on the break. So once you win that ball back, you put teams under, massive pressure straight away, because they'll know you have that pace and that ability to do that. So it'll be an interesting, couple of weeks. He's got to work with the players, work with the squad, get the fitness levels back, the injured players, and, see what we've got coming out the other end. But it'd be good to get something at Leicester before everything, kicks off again.
Yeah, I mean, Temps, I think I asked you what Cooper might do, not what you would do. So I should give you the opportunity of what you would actually like to see in terms of a shape.
Yeah, well, look, it's sticking with 3 at the back. I think, to Gary's point, we should pack the midfield by removing one of the luxury players and putting another workhorse, rounded central midfielder in there. So my team, if you want it, Matt, would be to get Niakate back at the heart of this defence with McKenna and Worrell either side of him. Keep faith with Lodi, who it hasn't quite clicked for yet, but I think his coolness on the ball, his threat will come good, and he'll prove to be a shrewd acquisition. Williams, rock solid so far. He keeps his place. So nothing unfamiliar there. But I think that O'Brien-Mangala combo could be the right mix of everything that we need to be busy with the ball and busy without the ball. And I think that could be a real linchpin in there. However, I think having 3 luxury players, for want of a better phrase, ahead of them is a little bit indulgent, and has allowed us to be overrun at times in centre mid, where a lot of teams play a 3, and they have been passing around us for fun at times and passing through the line, certainly. So I just wonder if Awani is a focal point, with Morgan Gibbs-White playing in that 10 role, getting up to support him when he can, but dropping deep when work is required, is a way to go about it, and adding Freuler to the mix as well. So Hendo, Niakate, McKenna, Worrell, Williams and Lodi, O'Brien, Mangala, Freuler, with Taiwo as the out-and-out 9, and MGW getting up with him as a 10. So look, that's just removing one of those attacking runners, which will remove a certain something from the team, I know. But I just think we need to add another industrious player to centre mid, because whatever combination of 2 you pick at the minute, if they've got 3 ahead of them who aren't really in the game defensively, that's just proving a little bit frail for Premier League opposition. and not gold standard Premier League opposition. Let's not forget that, as Garry said earlier, Fulham and Bournemouth have both come to the City ground and scored 3 goals. We've got to stop that.
True. I mean, Garry, I suppose there's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't it? Is it all? A manager I used to work with at a lower level always said formations would give players excuses in a sense. Does it still come down to individual responsibility and doing your job to make a collective performance?
Always has, always will for me. I used to come back for corners and I used to have to pick somebody up. I was told to mark somebody. It doesn't happen now. It just frustrates me when I see players not even watching where the ball is from a corner. All they're interested in is looking at the player. It's the flight of the ball and the delivery of the ball that's going to catch you out, not the bloke. All he's got to do is sort of give you a little shove and he's off balance and you don't even know where the ball is. And, he gets a free header. It's always about individual responsibility. And if my bloke scored, I get a right rollicking off the manager. And it was always like that. You have to take individual responsibility for the better of the team. Yes, you can have your individuals who are outstanding, who will make a difference, who can change the game, and you accept that. Like Haaland now, that bloke is just unbelievable, and he's got that service that he's always going to have because there are that many classy players in that Manchester City side. So he doesn't have any responsibility apart from sticking the ball in the back of the net. But he's a one-off. Harry Kane's work rate, it's not just about goals with him. Harry's work rate is tremendous. His movement's tremendous. He's a team player. So there are different sorts of strikers. There always will be. But, first and foremost, you have to take responsibility in your own performance, for the good of the team. And if you've got players out there who can do that, then you've got half a chance because they're going to dig in. They're going to do the right things if they possibly can. I haven't got a problem with players making mistakes if they try and do it the right way. It's, players making mistakes for the sake of making mistakes to try and be maybe a bit clever or whatever. And we've got to cut those little mistakes out because they'll become bigger the season goes on. And if we don't, start moving out the relegation zone. So, yeah, it's going to be a difficult one, but one I think Steve can overcome.
Disappeared there, Temps. You're back.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, never lost you.
Good. Garry mentions corners there and mistakes, which leads on to probably the Fulham goals. Match of the day didn't make for pretty viewing for Ryan Yates. He was picked out for all 3. I mean, the first goal, to what extent is Yates to blame there for you when he gets blocked off?
No, it's probably Mitrovic's biggest contribution to the game thus far, wasn't it? He made a perfect block on Ryan Yates. He then went down feigning injury to distract the referee from what he did. But he very shrewdly gave Yates' man a free run at the ball. And look, he what a leap, big fella anyway, got up early and put it away. So Yates just needs to be aware of that and know that it's going to happen and know that Premier League opposition is shrewder. But on a pre-planned move from the training ground, they managed to steal a march and the big centre-half is up there and finishes really well. So it's hard to blame Yatesy for that one. But off the back of that, yeah, Dion Dublin got stuck in a bit, didn't he? And pointed out some of the frailties and the mistakes and everything else. And look, I'm not going to hang the lads for mistakes, but I think what all the supporters want to see is rectification and no lack of effort in trying to plug holes that appear while we're getting used to the pace of the Premier League. And 1 or 2 examples, weren't there, where there was less than 100% effort put in getting back in those positions and overcoming those mistakes. And that's what Steve Cooper is going to address in training this week. And that's what the supporters should be wrangled about. We all make mistakes at whatever level of football we play. We have to forgive them, but we won't forgive a lack of effort. So I think the message to the players is that, look, of course you're going to make mistakes. You're coming up against absolute class week in, week out. And whatever game plan you've got, there's 11 fellas that are trying to undermine it. But have the right attitude, go again, put the 20-yard sprint in and get back to where you need to be, because there were 1 or 2 examples where that didn't happen on Friday night. And we just need to work that little bit harder. I'm not bagging any individual there. I think that applies to absolutely everyone.
Well, I just said, I don't mind players making mistakes if they're trying to do it the right thing. But the one that sticks out for me in the Bournemouth game was when Jesse Lingard gave it away and then did nothing to try and retrieve it, just walked. If I'd have lost the ball there, I'd have been sprinting, trying to get, the ball back or put the guy under pressure. But, he didn't, and they scored from that. So, it's those little situations that, you know, can annoy you. You've got to have that effort if you've made a mistake to try and rectify that mistake. And if you don't, then you're going to, like I say, the highest level, you'll get punished. It's just as simple as that. Not just in the, you know, the Premier League. If you look in La Liga, if you go to Italy, and, you know, everywhere, you know, it stands out more. And you know, you've got to learn very quickly. And the disappointing thing about both those games, we went, you know, we were in front, and then we lost the games when we didn't need to. And, you know, players, like I said earlier, Steve can do nothing about that, because you can guarantee he would have said exactly what I'm saying now. Do not give them the opportunity to get back in the game early. You know, do the right thing, do the basics well. And we just didn't do the basics particularly well. You know, that's so important. The best teams in world football do the basics well. You know, yes, they've got fantastic ability, but if they don't do the basics well, Manchester City, for me, yes, they beat us 6, but their pressing and their desire to get the ball back in every situation was just out. You have to do. The best players in the world are the best players in the world because they do it all. They don't just do, you know, they're not just flash Harrys. They work hard. They're in that team because they work hard, and they'll put their lot in. And I think we've got, you know, you've got to learn off people like that. Yes, you're not going to be as good as them, but you can learn, you know, the basics a little bit better.
Garry, can I just ask you about the defensive press? So from where I'm sat, I'm seeing teams out press us, and us quite happy to let the opposition have the ball at home. So Fulham had 70-something% of possession first half, mainly because we're happy for them to have it in their third, play side to side, change the point of attack without really threatening. They had a lot of the ball. We chose not to press. We chose to be deep and compact. Is that the way to go? Or could we impose ourselves more on these games by pressing further up the pitch, trying to turn over possession further up the pitch and giving the opposition less time on the ball?
Again, that is the major difference between the Championship and the Premier League. I think you can sit back a little bit more in the Championship and allow that to happen and counter teams. But I think in the Premier League, you have to have the confidence to be higher up the pitch, you know, probably 5 yards further up the pitch, and have confidence that you know, your two wing backs, if you like, are going to come round if you do get into trouble. You know, the only problem with that is if you switch off when you're going forward, and, you know, teams can then hurt you because of where the wing backs are. They'll try and hit you in those spaces which have been left by those runs forward. But I'd rather press higher up the pitch than be, you know, dropping deeper and encouraging teams on, because that's what you do when you drop deep. You get surge after surge after surge, because, you know, the teams that the back players for those teams have got nothing really to do, so they can get possession and start things off, and then, you know, the higher they go up the pitch, then, you know, the craftsmen, you know, the artisans in midfield, you know, they're the ones who will then take over, and it's constant pressure. You know, you've got to try and reapply the pressure on them further up the pitch, and you know, that was my job to start with. You know, I had to close people down. You know, you defend from the front, but I think we can, as a unit, we can, you know, maybe shuffle up the pitch a little bit more and make it more difficult for oppositions.
I suppose part of the theory is that this worked last year in the Championship, didn't it? Because we had this explosive pace that we won the ball deep, and then Jed Spence could run 60 yards. Premier League clubs seem a little bit wiser to it, to me. I mean, Garry mentions Man City. I saw an interesting stat about, I think they've got, in terms of intensity, they're one of the lowest intensity teams on the ball. They don't move it quickly, particularly, but they're winning it high up, and that they're the most intense team in the league. So when they've got the ball at the back, they'll pop it about side to side. But if they win it high at the pitch, they'll absolutely murder you, as we've seen. And it's a difficult balance to pick out overall, I guess. Just going back to Yates, then, I mean, I thought the second goal criticism was a little bit harsh. It's another 9 times out of 10 thing you get away with it, not getting out that extra yard to Polina, but 99 times out of 100 he doesn't bend it into the corner either, does he? The third goal was the one that killed me a bit. That was the real low point. That was just a catalogue of errors, wasn't it? I mean, Yates, again, I'm not picking him out. We'll ask about a general opinion of him in a minute, but he gets caught. Well, now I'm going to defend him in a minute. He gets caught out, then Loddy just runs into the centre spot, into the penalty spot for no reason. Freuler's, I don't see the whole thing, but Freuler runs into the picture late and looks like he's let his man run off him. Maybe I'm doing him a disservice and he sprinted 60 yards to try and get back in. But to leave Reed that freedom in the box just compounded 5 minutes of absolute catastrophe. I don't know. What do you make of that goal, Gary? Watching it, that is the one that is unacceptable to me.
Yeah, it is unacceptable, and the players involved in that will know. But it's about learning. If you don't learn from that, that's the thing for me. The two games against two teams that came up with us. Yes, they were automatic promotion. Fulham, by a bit of a distance. Bournemouth only just. But they're the games you look at and say, right, we can win these games, and if we don't make mistakes and do the basics right. Again, it's about switching off and not being concentrated. Concentration for me is one of the most important things in football or any sport. If you lose concentration, you're just going to you're going to lose your way, and I think that's what we've done. And if we don't learn from that, players have to learn. I keep saying this. I hate to repeat myself, but that's the only way to put it right, by not doing that. And Steve, you can do all the work in the world on the training pitch, but if players keep doing it when they're out there, like I say, there's nothing he can do about that apart from keep telling them. But if they keep making mistakes, then they don't deserve to be in the side if they're not learning from what they're doing wrong.
So what about Ryan Yates then, Temps, who's the topic on Twitter on Sunday morning, I think, as normal. A lot of people writing him off as a Premier League player. Where are you at on him?
Don't write him off, because his work ethic's incredible and he'll be aware of the facets of his game that need to improve. We've heard the stories pre-season about his pre-breakfast 10-milers, which I think Gary's done one this morning himself, to make sure he was at least ready in a fitness sense for the Premier League. But don't write Ryan Yates off. You need players like that in your squad this year. He'll have a role to play. He doesn't start in my 11 at the minute, because I think there are other players that just have a little bit more to them. And I think Lewis O'Brien can be that box-to-box Ryan Yates style figure and add a little bit more to what he offers as well. So Yatesy has a big role to play for me. I'm not writing him off. He's not quite in my starting 11. Just a quick note on the goal. That was Harrison Reed's first goal for Fulham in 80 appearances. And he had the freedom of the pitch, didn't he? We've all seen the analysis on Match of the Day. I think if I can just go back 2 questions to the pressing debate, let's divide the Premier League in half, because we've gone deep and compact there against 2 teams that we feel we're on a bit of a par with and have the right to compete with. And that's a different prospect to Man City at home, where you have to be deep and compact. I just want to see us go front foot against teams that we feel are there for the beating. And if we win 5 of those games and lose 5, then fine. But I just think giving up possession at home against teams in the bottom quartile of the Premier League is a little bit submissive. And that's the point I was trying to make there. But don't write Yatesy off. He'll be back, but he needs a couple of games out of the side for me.
Yeah, I agree. He wouldn't be in my 11 right now, but he's a player that I'd have coming off the bench in certain match scenarios. And he's a player who I think can grow into the Premier League. It's a lot to expect someone to keep stepping up. And the same goes for Brennan. Maybe I've advocated always picking Brennan. And if he was in the team against Leicester, I'd be happy. But if they do go with Dennis or just 2 up front, then I'd be equally happy with that.
I was just about to mention Brennan, because Temps mentioned his team, and Brennan wasn't in that particular team, and you didn't mention the fact that you leave him out. So would you leave him out at the moment?
I would, Gary, because I think he needs to, and he will learn this, that being on the highlights reel every week in the Championship was brilliant, and he was probably responsible personally for 24 points. This season, you could argue that he's looked our most likely goal scorer in the games that he's had. I think there's a bigger role to play for finishers, those that are going to finish the game in the Premier League, than there is in the Championship. And that change of pace with a player like him will cause the opposition a lot of challenge and issue. However, he is a luxury player because he doesn't compete with headers on the long punts. He hasn't got any real defensive attribute. He's not pressing. Maybe that's because of how he's been asked to play within the system, but he's not quite doing enough. The highlights are still there. I think given all the time in the world, he would be the man for goals and assists. But at this moment in time, What we need is some industry in centre mid, and that's the only way I can see to get it in there is to get rid of that second striker in the system at the minute, because we do need the 10, the one in behind Taiwo, that can become the additional striker when we're in possession or when the ball's wide. I think that's more Gibbs-White than it is Johnson at this point. Again, similar point to Yatesy. Brennan Johnson has got 10 years in this first team if he wants it, and he's going to become an established Premier League player. Let's not get sight of how young he is and how quickly we're asking him to adapt from League One to the Championship to the Premier League. But again, for me, he needs a couple of games out of the side because of the situation that we're in, the fact we need to earn the right to play and pick up points by being a bit more solid defensively rather than taking a chance with 3 luxury players at the top of the pitch. I love Brennan Johnson. Tipped him at the start of the season for 15 combined goals and assists, and he still may well get there. He's not having it all his own way at the minute. He's coming up against better defenders, and he just has to develop that little bit more before he becomes an out-and-out automatic pick in this Forest side. Great player, needs a little bit of time outside of the limelight, even if that's a couple of games, and he'll be back. Don't write him off again, but I don't think at the minute he's a guaranteed starter.
Well, I think you have to look at him when he plays for Wales. He looks a totally different player for me at that level because he's playing with better players. In that international setup, he feels comfortable in that. I think the expectation levels on him are very high in the Forest team because of what happened last season. I said it on the last podcast. I think, him and Gibbs-White, 21, 22, that's a lot of expectations on 2 young lads' heads. One, it's bad enough, but when you've got 2 in those forward positions, that it's asking a lot for them to, get that consistency. Again, you go back to, that was the other C word, the concentration, but consistency is the word. Again, I'll say what David Platt said all those years ago. Great players don't get better, they get more consistent. And that's one of the best sayings I've heard in football because it's so true. The consistency levels the best players in the world show are incredible, and that's why they are called the best players in the world. So you can understand his performances, Brennan's performances when he's playing for his country are better because he's playing with better players, and that's no disrespect to anybody at Forest at all. That's just the way it is, and he's got to learn very quickly again because the Premier League is a harsh league to have to learn. And we've seen Norwich again. I keep bringing them up. They can't find a way to stay in the Premier League. That's how difficult it is. They have a season, they get in there, they go back down. They come back up, they go back down. It's like West Brom used to do the same, the boing baggies. It's so difficult in the Premier League to stay in there. And, no matter who you are, you look at Everton, the trouble they've been having. The Frank Lampard's job was on the line. It's not just, the teams who've come up from, the Championship. Other teams can get drawn in. West Ham are down there at the moment. Leicester City. You wouldn't think those teams were going to get in those situations, but they have. And that's the brutality of the Premier League. It can happen.
Exactly. So his next game will be his 100th league appearance. He's a 21-year-old lad. He's way ahead of where he should be at this point in his career. And he can write his own future, Brennan Johnson. He could one day be a 15-goal man in the Premier League. No question. I agree with what you say there. You could plug him into a good side, couldn't you? Because of the weapons he's got, the poise, the pace, and find a way to involve him more in games. I think we're guilty of that at times as well. I think there are times where you'll notice he hasn't touched the ball for 20 minutes, but he needs to be fed that ball. And we haven't, in a team that's going to have 35% possession at home, you're going to be out on the limb a little bit, pinned on the right wing without the ball coming anywhere near you. But look what happened first half. That ball that spun off when we won the corner was a result of his industry, his pace, and his willingness to run. So, look, not dismissing Brennan Johnson. He'll be a star for years.
No, definitely not dismissing him at all. I just think it's a little bit harsh on him and Gibbs-White because they are the 2 young players who a lot's expected of, and we're only a little way into the season. So it's too early to be, saying, well, he's not up to it. He's not up to it. It's a very difficult league to get used to. Bergkamps and people like that came over. Hey, they didn't hit it off first time. They struggled a little bit. Thierry Henry, everybody thinks, oh, these great players, but they find the Premier League difficult when they first come over because of the nature of what it is. It's fast, it's furious, it's difficult. Any team's capable of beating anybody else, and it can be harsh. But you have to be strong in mind, more so than body, really. I think it's very easy to get down on yourself when you're being criticised. But it's early stages of the season. Yes, there's a little bit worry because we're in the bottom three, and mentally as a player when you're in the bottom three, I never knew that because I was never in that situation, luckily. So I don't know, what that does to a player when he's in that particular position. But you've got if it's next sort of February and you're in the bottom three, then you've got something to worry about. But we're in September at the moment. We've got the World Cup coming up. Those 2 months could be massive for Forest and teams like Forest, to get things right and work on things. That gap could be, very interesting, for Forest, especially for me, because Steve works so hard on the training pitch, and he'll be aware of what's wrong, and he'll be trying to put it right, and he'll have time to put it right. And, to start having a go at, anybody at this particular moment in time, is wrong. Yes, we criticise because I played at that level, and that's only because I would have done something different to what I'm seeing when I'm watching the game. So it's not criticism as such. It's just you shouldn't have done that, because I think I've got the knowledge to say that. So it's never criticism for the sake of criticism. So it's going to be an interesting few months now with the World Cup coming up, and I think it's come at the right time for us. If we can just get one win in the next couple of games, you're suddenly looking more mid-table than bottom table, and that'll be good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just last year on Brennan, I'd actually be quite happy if he did play against Leicester, just because of his pace and how bad Leicester are at the back and what he did to them last season. Even, Temps mentioned winning corners, even if he's winning corners out wide, just crossing his players' legs, we saw how bad Leicester are at the back. That's not even the worst tactic against them. I mean, there's a point. Leicester are absolutely dire at the moment, and Rodgers is right on the ropes. Is a point a good result there, Gary?
I would say so. Any point at the moment's a good point because we're not picking any points up. It gives you, it's away from home. It can set your season going a little bit more, but you still look at the quality of the players they have in their team. Don't dish the players they've got because, they are decent players and they've been very good in the Premier League over the past few seasons. So that they'll feel it's a game that could turn their season round, and we've got to be very wary of that. I'm sure Steve will be telling the players that, but it's also a game that we can sort of hopefully build on, get something out of. But yeah, I'd take anything at the moment because losing to Bournemouth and to Fulham, the two teams we keep saying who came up, that really hurts. You win one of those two games, you're in a totally different place. But to lose both of them and get nothing out both of them when we should have done, that's a disappointing thing. And Steve will know that. He'll be annoyed at what he's seen in both those games and trying his best to put it right.
Temps, thoughts on I mean, we'll do more on Leicester next week, but just general thoughts, a point, or are you thinking that they need to win the game?
We have to avoid defeat because that would be 5 Premier League games lost in a row, and none of us quite know what the Greeks would do at that point. We all saw what happened at Olympiacos over the weekend. I want Steve Cooper to finish this season as manager of Forest come what may. I've been quite consistent with that, but there will come a point in the ownership's mind where off the back of the investment they've made, they'll feel the need to make a change. So I think avoid defeat because that could be quite chastening. It would be triggering potentially for the ownership looking at the recent run of results. However, we've got this run now of 4 games before Liverpool, which is Leicester away, Villa at home, and then trips to Wolves and Brighton. And it looks like a run in which you could pick up points if you get things right. I hope he does, because Steve Cooper, 1 year into his reign, can reflect on doing a lot of things really, really well. I think his mindset is still long-term. Establishing a team in which Joe Worrell, Ryan Yates, and Brennan Johnson become starters is part of the culture he's trying to create to demonstrate that local players can come into this side and go on the football journey that they want to go on. So whilst Leicester is a game that we target, I think avoiding defeat is very, very important. Wouldn't be disappointed with a draw, but we have to back that up with positive performances against Villa, Wolves and Brighton. How long has he got? Who knows? I don't think that the ownership are particularly known for their patience. They have invested heavily. They probably want to see a stronger showing than what they're seeing now in terms of results. But I hope Cooper's given time, because I think he could build something truly special here.
Yeah, we saw, Tempest referencing Carlos Corberán being sacked after 6 weeks at Olympiacos there. But we have to be realistic and say that, fans would like to see Cooper stay no matter what, but the ownership have invested a lot of money. Garry, I assume you would still be backing the manager, even if they do lose to Leicester and a couple more beyond that.
Oh, massively. Let's, again, perspective. You're talking about Olympiacos. All due respect, the Greek league is not very strong. So if you're losing games there and you're getting the sack, you probably understand it, because Olympiacos are supposed to be one of the top teams and are supposed to do better. But what Steve Cooper's done and what he's still trying to do, it's got to be left alone, because we've seen how many managers Nottingham Forest have had over the past years, and it just shows you it doesn't work. Keep getting rid of managers. It's nearly worked before, but nearly's not good enough. But when Steve Cooper came in, we all saw the bright light that emerged. The fact that he had more or less the same players and got us promoted, and then everybody was talking about the signings. How many signings? Were there too many? And you think, well, can there ever be too many? You need a big squad to be able to stay in the Premier League. But the problem with a big squad is keeping everybody happy. That's the difficult part for any manager. And I say, once he gets the chance to get his best team in his mind, the best starting 11, I think that will be something we can look at after the international break and the World Cup, and then you can make a judgment more. Because you need that time to be able to get your best 11, and it's not easy because you've got so many people, so many pundits or whatever, us lot doing this, saying you should play somebody up front maybe. I'm always for playing getting a striker in the side, because that gets you promotion, that stops you going down. If you score goals and you're winning games, and that's pure and simple. You have to have somebody who's scoring goals for you. But it's not going to be easy. It was never going to be easy, no matter how many players you bring in. All the players that did come in, you thought, well, Jesse Lingard's the only one who's sort of a name that everybody knows. The Froilers and Lodies and people like that. Not a lot of people have probably heard of them. And that's understandable. But it all might come right. We just don't know. It's too early in the season to even contemplate thinking about anything like that, because we're in the bottom three, but like I said, the table isn't beyond us. We're not getting cut adrift as yet, and if we win one game, we could get out the relegation zone and things look better. So let's be patient at this moment in time, because Steve deserves that time for what he's achieved at this football club so far to put it right and get us moving up the league.
Yeah, I think Mikel Arteta is probably the best example of giving a manager time at this level and what they can do. Arsenal weren't a great side a couple of years ago, and now they're flying with some cohesion and time to build a team, which I think is what Cooper needs. Very high expectations if you think he's going to make everything click so quickly after 20 odd new signings.
Dead right.
Just lastly, it was a comment earlier from Richard, I think, mentioning Brian Clough's passing and that we should reference it. We did do right at the start, Richard, so it has been covered. Right, I think we'll leave it there, apart from any other comments or any other business. Temps, anything you want to add before you disappear?
No, nothing to add. I'm going to take a little bit of a lesson from my lifestyle guru, Garry Birtles now, who says he looks so well because he walks 5 miles before breakfast. So I'm going to try and do better there.
Good.
I just do 2 hours. It's just I try and do 20,000 steps a day if I possibly can. So
20,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Fair play. Garry, anything you want to add before you put in another 10,000 steps?
No, I'm just going for another walk in a bit. Yeah. So nothing else. Just let's keep smiling because we're in the Premier League. We're not cut adrift. We have got a chance to move up the table, and life's good. It's better than. Funnily enough, I don't even look at the results in the Championship anymore. I don't about anybody else. It doesn't interest me now. The Championship for some. It's weird. It's just the Premier League, and I watch how Nigel's doing at Mansfield and how Notts County are doing, but I don't look at the Championship. It's one of those things, and that's purely down to Steve Cooper, what he's done, for Nottingham and for the football club. He's put smiles back on people's faces. Let's keep them there, because it can get better.
True. I certainly don't look at League One and what's going on there. I couldn't tell you the first thing about how that's going. Right. I think we'll leave it there. Temps, you want to say something? You look like you're itching to come in, or are you just looking very content? No, he's
itching to get out because he's got that meeting. So
he's got 4 minutes to the meeting. Yeah.
I'm a pen pusher, mate. This is it. I do need to find a way to get away from this desk a bit more often than I do.
Well, yeah, I certainly do. Working at home. Oh my God, I need to get out a lot more. Right, we will leave it there. Thanks to everyone who's watched along, commented as ever. And as I always say, if you enjoyed this, do like and subscribe and give us a good review. The sun is shining so massively in my face. It's a good time to finish.
Schoolboy error.
It is, yeah. Next week, I'm not sure what we'll do because it's the second week international. We'll talk about Leicester. I think we might do a bit of a Q&A type thing. So if people got any questions, do think of those. Otherwise, in the meantime, Gary, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure, as always.
And certainly was. Temps, thank you.
Cheers, fellas. Speak to you soon.
And we shall see everyone soon.